Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. Do us a big favor, folks. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. As I always tell you, it's always much appreciated when you tune in. And I really do mean that, folks. I know there are a lot of choices out there, so I always appreciate when you pick the John Keim Report. Anyway, you can also read my work on ESPN.com. I had a story up last weekend on Washington offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy and the impact he's made already. Now, we will see what kind of impact he makes during the season, but he's definitely made one so far, and I think the offense will be better for it. Then it comes down to when do they become good? How well does Sam Howell do? And some of that stuff I got into with my guest today, Logan Paulsen, on Monday. That was part one of my conversation with Logan Paulsen. Today is part two of my conversation with the former Washington tight end turned analyst for the team. Paulsen has the Take Command podcast with Craig Hoffman. Give that a listen. He also does a lot of work with the team and Santana Moss, London Fletcher, Fred Smoot, Julie Donaldson, all of them. He does interviews with Ron Rivera that are always very revealing and insightful. So give those a listen, a watch, all that good stuff. Anyway, so Logan and I talked a lot about, again, the offense the other day, Sam Howell, expectations, levels of optimism after the spring, what he expects for the season. That's what we're doing with the defense today. Defense is further ahead, folks, and they should be. This is year 4 under Jack Del Rio and year 2 with their zone match coverage schemes, plus their top 2 picks play defense and play in the secondary. That group looked really good this spring. So we get into all that with Logan, what he thinks after the spring and what it means for the season. And again, as I reminded you the other day, I'm now down to 2 podcasts a week for the next several weeks as we kind of taper down for a month or so up until we get closer to training camp. So, but again, I'll continue to put out content that I think you guys will appreciate and enjoy. Anyway, that's it from me. So here's part 2 of my conversation with former Washington tight end Logan Paulsen.
The adventure park is ziplining through the trees. It's climbing from platform to platform. It's even an axe throwing competition with your friends. But what the adventure park really is opportunity. Reconnecting with friends and family, accomplishing a challenge, and making lasting memories. So book your visit today and choose your own adventure.
All right, now let's turn to the defense.
Okay.
So one of the things that, it's funny because they are at a good spot. How much could you tell watching them that they've been in the system, not just the Jack Del Rio system, but also the zone match system now for a second year? How could you see a difference this spring just in how they looked?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, yes, like definitively, yes. They just seem so much more comfortable. Like this, how they play the defense, and this is not true of this defense only, but one of the elements of this defense is you need to pattern recognize very, very quickly and know how you fit in the match principle. And I thought the communication was very, very high. There weren't any free runners. There weren't, linebackers weren't dropping people in coverage. There weren't any kind of communication errors. Like Emmanuel Forbes, Quan Martin did a great job of kind of being like, oh, we got this dig here. Let's pass this off. Let's get this communicated. I'm going to replace the safety who's cutting the crosser. And it just seemed like this intricate dance that had just been perfected. And I'm sure that Jack would disagree with the use of my term perfection, but holy cow, man, they just did a really, really nice job of being on the same page. There were no easy throws. Last year, I felt like there was a couple times where there was a coverage bust. Guys dropped a dude in coverage. There's a guy wide open, and it's an easy throw for the offense. And this year, I felt like that was just not the case. There was no, give me broken plays, busted coverages. They just did a really, really nice job. And that wasn't just the starters. The second group did a great job too. So it was a lot of fun to watch, but especially having that young speed in the back end, Percy Butler, DeForest, the maturity that they showed in year 2 and 3 respectively. I just was, again, very, very impressed with that group. And, the secondary for me was probably the most impressive group of camp, quite honestly. So, that just shows you how highly I think of what they did during this offseason.
Oh, I loved what we saw from them. And I think it's a smart group.
Yes. Yes, I think that's that's exactly right. Like one of the things that Ron said about drafting Quan and drafting Forbes is they're guys that had played in zone, but were also very like instinctive football players. And I was really impressed by the maturity and the professionalism of both those guys. As you come in and you expect, like I expected Forbes to look good, but I expected him to have some tough days. Not because he's physically incapable of doing it, but because of the mental demands of the position. Yeah, he's a rookie, man. And I didn't really see that from him. And, they're not running the football. The whole offense isn't in. There's a lot of reasons to kind of temper that excitement. But golly, man, both those guys did a great job. And then the Percy and Forrest also. And I don't know if it's a change in coaching or a change in the coaching points, but everyone just seemed like they were very, very comfortable and on the same page in a way that was unexpected, quite frankly. So.
And it's funny because I bring up the smarts. Like I think Kendall Fuller is one of the smarter corners that I've covered. I think St. Juice does a good job learning as well.
Yes.
And I think Forbes is in that category as well. I think, he was a smart college corner. Quan Martin, you can't do what he did at Illinois, bouncing around, moving around without having a knowledge of football, right? And I think Cam Curl's that way. So I think that's why I say when you have that, it just seems like you can do a lot more in terms of disguising and things like that. How much will that help this group?
I mean, again, when you talk to quarterbacks, one of the most challenging things about NFL defenses now is that their ability to bounce effortlessly between coverages and not give you a definitive pre-snap look. And this group, not only can they do that from an intellectual standpoint, but from a personnel standpoint, they've got 5 safeties that could play at any given time and be comfortable. Like if Cam Crow's playing, he could basically play linebacker with, Jamin or Cody or whatever. And you feel very confident about the ability to disguise who's the nickel, who's the safety, who's the post, who's the box, and just effortlessly kind of play this positionless football, much like in basketball, how they've all gone small ball now. Mm-hmm. And I think it presents some of the same issues. You get a lot of speed on the field, and you get guys who are better coverage players. And as much as people want to talk about running the football, like the NFL today is about throwing the ball. So get those guys on the field, have them build those relationships, have them disguise those coverages, and that's a dangerous proposition in my perspective.
And it's funny because before they could go with a 51 with 5 D-backs. Now you could go, 4 down, 1 linebacker, and 6 defensive backs because of the ability of Martin and Curl to be versatile in what they do.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I did a little project on Cameron Curl, and they talked about can Quan play the Buffalo nickel. And one of the things when I was doing the study of Cam is just like how special his skill set is, his ability to take on an offensive lineman with his length and then go cover a receiver or lock down a tight end. And that's a very unique skill set. And I don't know if Quan is up to that level yet, but I think that's why you bring in a guy who's very explosive, very twitched up. It'll be really interesting to see him versus the run looks, because like right now in coverage, he's amazing. Like, holy cow, he can move his feet. He matches up against receivers, that nickel overhang spot. He just looked very, very confident. But if you're going to replace Cam in the box, which Cam did an excellent job of last year, you need a certain type of mindset and a certain type of physicality, which is personally why in the draft, I thought they might go a different direction, because I thought they were looking for like more of a thumper. But in terms of football player, Quan's the cream of the crop, but can he do some of that stuff in the box with the lineman, taking on tight ends, taking on a fullback if he needs to? And to me, that if he can do that, this group is going to be really, really fantastic.
And that's, and I think that's where you go. What about, we only saw Chase Young for 3 days. And what I tell people is he looked more confident in his knee, but ultimately you're still helmets and shorts, right?
Right.
So, but did you see anything from him where you say, okay, that looks good? And like, even though it's just, as they say, underwear Olympics, what did you see from him that maybe was jumped out to you?
Well, I think my biggest question about him coming back basically was just like, where's he at with the knee? And I know it was like 2 days, of not a lot of intense work, but the burst seemed to be back. The confidence of the knee seemed to be back. He, he wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but like he had a couple nice wins in pass rush during the team period. Now those are hard for the O linemen because they don't have pads on, all that stuff. But you saw a guy who was getting back to that, if not already back to that kind of physical freak. And, he didn't have enough rushes for me to say, oh, he's definitively fixed his rush, but he had some nice wins. He looked explosive and he looked confident. And for 2 days of work, like that's kind of what I was hoping to see. Now it would be really worrisome if he came back and was limping around and not quite the same guy, but he didn't show that. He showed that he looks to be healthy. He looks to be confident, and the explosion and the athleticism, which, made him the second overall pick, seemed to be back in full form.
What are your expectations? Well, sticking with him for a minute, the other thing I didn't see, Logan, was the stutter steps. I didn't watch him every snap. I didn't watch him every rep, but I didn't see that. I think that if he can eliminate that, at least consistently, that's a good thing for him.
I think so too. And again, we're talking about like his rush angles. That's kind of what I'm referencing there. You didn't get enough reps to kind of say, oh, he's completely fixed this. But in terms of the reps you did see, they were good. So, like for 5 reps, you're like, okay, they're all good. So hopefully that just continues into the next phase of the offseason.
What are your expectations for the defense then this season? Because one of the things too, I hear from players, like they know they finish strong. They know they always finish strong. They know they have to start fast. So, but what are your expectations?
That's a really good question. I think after seeing the defense, my expectations are a little bit higher. And I always am a guy who likes to temper my expectations, but they just were so good. And I think about last year, the last couple of years, the Achilles heel for this group was just the back end they were good, but they weren't excellent. And I feel now that they are going to be flirting with excellence if they can gel and come together. And if that's the case, it's going to be a very scary group, especially with, Allen, Payne, Big Phil coming back as a depth piece, Ridgeway getting healthy, James, Casey, Chase, Montez, like that, and FAO, Bada. That group is scary. Obviously the linebackers are a little bit in question, but I look at what Jamin was doing, especially the last 4 games of the year, and he's grading like, one of the best linebackers in football, which is crazy. So it's all got to gel. It's all got to come together. People got to find their homes. People got to stay healthy, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of personnel, it's crazy to me what the depth in the back end did that they got in this draft and how it totally changed the complexion of the defense and what this defense is capable of. So I'm really excited. My expectations are high, but I'm going to try and temper them until I see them come together in training camp, until we see them, how they're playing the run, all those variables that we need to see them in the joint practice against Baltimore. But I definitely think they have the potential to be the best defensive line in football, one of the best defensive secondaries, probably top 5 defensive secondary in football. That's all potential, and that can be a bad word, but I'm very excited to see what this group can do.
And we've all seen times here where it goes south where you don't want it, but like there is reason to feel really good about him. Linebacker, what do you have any lingering concern? You kind of brought it up. Do you have any lingering concerns there? And the guy, and I know you've talked about, but I've been talking for a few weeks too, is Khalid Hudson.
Yeah.
And does he change when they maybe look for another linebacker, if they do? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was, Jamie didn't practice, obviously, or he practiced but didn't do any team. And if he to me, he's really interesting because if he finished the year grading, just talk about PFF metrics, right, wrong, and different, but he ended up grading in like the high 70s, which is very, very good. If he can continue to improve and develop like that, like that's going to be awesome for him, especially playing behind that defense. We'll see. He's not healthy, didn't do anything during the offseason. Cody, I think, has some nice ability, looked good at times, still learning the defense, obviously. And then you mentioned Khalid. Khalid looked great, man. He was my surprise player of the offseason.
Me too.
Great blitzer, great feel. Like he had, there's a couple times he's playing that Buffalo nickel overhang player on a receiver, matching up with those guys. And if he can do that for them, holy cow. Like, we talk about Quan playing in the box, but if you get that guy like that, Khalid shows that skill set, then you're not worried about having a physical run player because he's pretty good at that.
Right.
And it would add so much depth and allow you to take some of that box work off of Keim and let him kind of be the versatile chess piece in the back that he can be. So, yeah, I mean, it really depends on the development of those 2 players. I think it depends on the development of Jamin, if he becomes the guy that we think he can be. And then if Khalid shows a continued trajectory after that great Dallas game, the confidence he accrued there, he's a converted safety, takes a couple of years to kind of find yourself. Maybe this is the year, and man, that would be fantastic for this defense if that was the case.
Yeah, and I always tell people this is there's a step here, there's a step in the spring.
Yes.
The next
Yeah.
big step is camp, and you got to show it there too, and then the season. So there's ways to
Yes.
go, but this was what the feelings from the spring. Logan, tell people real quick where they can find you.
Well, obviously, anywhere that on the Commanders YouTube page, doing the shows there, the Take Command podcast with Craig Hoffman, which is for Odyssey Sports. I also do a podcast for the Commanders, which you can get on Spotify, which is great. I think that's all my stuff. And then the Instagram, Logan_Paulsen82. So,
Logan, you're the best. Thanks a lot, man.
thanks, John. Appreciate you having me.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Logan for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back with another episode on Monday. I'll talk to you next time.